Most intelligent actress there is. That's what they called you in those days in the 40s.
Oh, what an accusation.
Intelligent lady who's an intelligent actress.
What an accusation. That sounds like a death sentence in movies.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Character actress. I mean...
Oh, now you've mentioned my proudest title. Yeah, I was called at one point Hollywood's youngest character actress. And I was pretty pleased about that because there were no two roles alike, and that's the way I wanted it.
Uh-huh. From, where are you actually from, originally?
Well, I arrived, they tell me, in Evanston, Illinois, which I think is a suburb of Chicago, but I have no memory of it.
Really?
I was a babe in arms when we moved to New York, so all I know is New York City.
Top model.
I'm a New Yorker.
You were a model.
Yeah.
Tell me about your modeling days.
Well, the modeling was in order to pay for dramatic school. It was depression. But you see, I had it all figured out, Skip. I was going to be an actress in movies. That's odd for a New Yorker. You'd think I would have been stage struck. No, it was films I was heading for. And there was, at that time, no training for motion pictures to be had in the United States. No college or university offered any course in film. None. I looked. And since that's where I was headed and wanted to go, I had to figure out my own training for it. So I thought, well, I will go to a dramatic school. I'd better find out about the visuals, whether I photograph or not, and about grooming and hair and makeup and all that. So I will be a photographic model and learn about lights and cameras. Now sound, talkies had now come in. So what do I do about sound? Radio, of course. There was no TV, certainly then. So I will get myself on radio and find out about voice and how to use that with microphones.
Right.
And I devised this campaign. I became a Powers model at 16.
Powers model?
Oh, yes. I was a John Powers. They added the Robert later. He wasn't that distinguished then. He was John Powers. He became John Robert Powers a little later. But at 16, I was through with school. And so that was the photographic end of it. Dramatic school was Theodora Irvin's studio for the theater. That was right in New York City, and she was a grand old lady of theater. She knew what she was talking about. And I had a series of auditions at NBC with my 16-year-old voice, and this is really too ironic to be believed, but it is true that as I was packing to come to California, NBC called to say that I had passed the most recent audition, and they were placing me on the NBC dramatic staff available for casting. Too late. Bye, I'm off to California.
So you went to California. And what was your first film, actually?
The first movie, again, this is hard to believe, the first time I got paid to act, Skip, was the feminine lead in a major studio feature film seen around the world. That's a terrible way to learn your craft in front of a world audience.
Right.
It was a Paramount film called The Virginia Judge, and I was Mary Lou from Virginia, and I was, I had two, not one, but two leading men. One of them, Bob Cummings.
Robert Cummings, wonderful.
And it was also his first picture, and Johnny Downs, who was had been a leading boy in the Our Gang Comedy Kids, all grown up and very handsome, and now doing television in San Diego. the Virginia judge himself
Right.
was a fine old vaudevillian named Walter C. Kelly, and they strung a lot of his kind of homespun humor and wisdom. He was a kind of Will Rogers character, and he also had a niece named Grace. Grace Kelly came on the scene sometime later, but this was Walter C. Kelly. That was my first picture.
Lana Turner, you worked with this great lady in a film.
Her very first lead.
Her first lead?
Yeah,
What was
Lana
it?
had been discovered, but they didn't give her the feminine lead in something until These Glamour Girls.
These Glamour Girls, that's it. Yeah, working with her.
It was an interesting film about a...
Was she blonde then?
Oh, yes,
She
very
was
blonde.
blonde?
And with such a beauty, such a figure. It was about a house party at Princeton, but it was, of course, called Kingston. And there were 6 girls and 6 fellas come to the weekend house party.
Right.
And Lana was a dime a dance hall, Roseland,
Right.
a ballroom hostess, who had been invited in a drunken moment by rich Lou Ayres.
Oh, lovely.
Only she took his invitation seriously and showed up for the weekend, to everyone's embarrassment, because she was not one of us. I was a campus widow who had been around these coming out parties and things once too many times, and I was getting a little shrill and a little desperate, and I wound up killing myself.
You were very young in that film, too.
My first suicide. I was
very young.
21, I think.
And
I was
playing
all
older
of
parts
21.
all the time.
And I what?
You were always playing older parts.
Not
character
always. You
character
see,
parts.
among all these other things, I got to play old ladies, but only young people who go through the years into old age.
Right, right.
That one followed These Glamour Girls. The very picture after. That's what I mean by variety and character actress. That's what made me so enchanted and happy with what happened to me at Metro, at MGM.
Because you can do so many roles. Am I right?
I got to, and I
To
could
do so many roles, so many types of roles.
Every time they had
Like
a
Lawrence
puzzle
Olivier,
about
right?
how to cast a role, they'd say, throw it to Marsha, see what she'll do with it. And I thought that was the highest compliment. Yeah.
Like a Lawrence Olivier. He was
Let's
you
not
know,
compare
well,
me
he-
to Olivier, but,
But he did so many character roles. He's always playing.
he loved it, and he loved wearing noses.
Noses,
As a matter
yes.
of fact, I wore a nose
Did
in
you?
my first old age film because it's such a curly, I don't know, have you got a
Yes, okay.
turn
I see it.
sideways?
Yes.
It's such a curly profile that they thought, nobody will ever believe you're old. So they built me a nose, a straight
Yes.
nose. And we knew it was time to break for lunch when the heat from the lights got so bad that this nose began to slide slowly off my face. And they had to put a new one on during lunch hour.
Margaret O'Brien. I just watched this movie just a
Which movie?
The one you did with Margaret O'Brien.
When I
She's
did-
always
I
crying.
did-
You did many. How
I
many?
did 2 with Margaret.
2?
The
With James, I think it was with-
James Craig.
Craig.
That's my favorite. That's called Lost Angel.
Tell me about that movie. I just saw it. It was wonderful. Is that your favorite?
It's one of my favorites, certainly. Margaret was 6, and she was pure enchantment. She was an instinctive, conscientious, greatly gifted young actress. And it's interesting you mentioned Lost Angel because it was in the course of that film that I met Hugh Martin and Ralph Blaine,
Right.
whom we are honoring in a few nights for their lifespan of writing great, great songs for films and motion pictures. I played a nightclub singer.
Right.
And I sang I've Got You Under My Skin, and Hugh wrote me a very special arrangement of Under My Skin, and that's when we first met. And it was a talent love affair ever since. I heard some of the other things they had written, and I've been their slave
MGM
ever
Studios
since.
was wonderful working, thinking back, huh, Marsha?
Do you know, I knew the age was golden, Skip,
Right.
but I didn't know the days were numbered.
Those days were great, aren't they?
I didn't know it could ever end.
What do you think's going to happen with our business with the young people trying to become actors today? There's
It's
no,
so crowded a jungle.
everyone
that
wants
I
to be an
think-
actor.
Unless everyone, because our nation has grown to be such worshippers of celebrity. celebrity or notoriety. It doesn't matter what you're famous for.
Right.
Slitting your husband's throat, or drinking your bath water, or being an addict. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Just so you're famous. Then you write a book, a bestseller, and everyone wants your autograph. We're very sick. We're very
yes, we
sick in
are.
this country.
We really
We
are.
worship fame for its own sake. And that being so, every youngster, what do you want to be? Famous? That's
That's
all
it.
they know.
That quick money.
It doesn't matter what they're going to be famous for. But I think in order to have careers at acting shaped and nurtured and developed to a point of fulfillment,
Right.
we're going to have to get back to a studio system, a major studio system. I don't know that we ever will, but I think it would take that for careers ever to have, well, what I just said.
Yeah. Got to have them groomed.
Some growth, some
Growth.
development.
Yes, yes, yes. Marsha Hunt, Lionel Barrymore. Tell me about Lionel Barrymore. 'Cause
We
you
worked together
together.
in 2 pictures. One was a thing with Bob Sterling. I did 2 with Bob as my leading man.
Right.
Robert Sterling, who's Anne Jeffrey's husband.
Love her.
Was it The Penalty or I'll Wait for You? It was one of
Penalty.
them. The
Penalty. Yes.
You know it better than
Yes,
I
yes,
do,
yes.
Skip.
I did some homework. on you, Charlie. Go ahead.
All right, it was The Penalty.
Yes.
And he was in his wheelchair by then.
Right. He was in his wheelchair by then.
Yeah. But it was just a joy to watch that man work. What a gorgeous
He never
actor
complained
he
on the
was.
set at all.
Never. But if you happen to be walking on the lot at the end of the day as he was working his way back to his dressing room building,
Right.
you heard him groan with every step because he was in so much pain.
Oh, really?
That was before the wheelchair became permanent. The other film we did together was Valley of Decision.
Right. Right.
Marvelous,
Uh-huh.
overlooked film with one of the greatest casts, I think, of anything I've been connected with. Greer Garson, young Gregory Peck, Gladys Cooper, once voted the most beautiful woman in England, or maybe the world,
In the world,
probably the world. Donald Crisp, who was the head of a great dynasty of steel wealth in Pittsburgh. Their children, who were, Greg Peck was the son. I was a twin, Marshall Thompson, who starred in Daktari,
Right.
was my twin brother. Dan Duryea was another brother.
God, some people you've been with. Oh.
Lionel Barrymore, Preston Foster, Jessica Tandy.
Oh, one great.
It won't stop, this
Yes.
cast.
Yes.
And it's a rather wonderful film. I hope somebody gives it another go-round on TV. It deserves it. I had a lovely role. I played a flighty, willful, spoiled, not necessarily heart of gold, rather selfish, self-centered, but certainly not evil, who comes through at the end with flying colors. I elope with a titled Englishman.
Brandon DeWilde. What a tragic life. What a
He pronounced
wonderful
his
young
name
actor.
DeWilde, yeah. I never knew
Is
why.
it Brandon DeWilde?
Yeah,
Wonderful
he liked
actor.
it pronounced that, yes. I saw him in Member of the Wedding on Broadway, and like everyone, fell in love with him. And then I worked as his mother with MacDonald Carey playing his father, and Carol Lindley, his first love.
Right, that's right.
And I remember I wrote a poem, Brandon DeWilde certainly filled a need I had for a teenage lad to call my own, though he's just on loan. It went on and on. But the idea was that I was very happy to be his mother.
Was it Blue Demon?
Blue Denim.
Blue Demon. What a wonderful movie that was. That
It
a
was,
good
it was an important movie. I think it's the
Very.
first time that abortion came up on the big screen for discussion and even for examination as to whether it was a good or a bad idea for really adolescent kids who were nowhere near parent age or responsibility, but you couldn't get away in that day with having the abortion as the right solution. She had to go ahead and have it and have both their lives chained down before they even knew who they were. They were children having children. You know.
Marsha Hunt, have you enjoyed doing all this, looking back? Have you enjoyed being in the
yeah,
films
because
under contract?
I don't look back, and it's kind of a refreshing treat, Skip, to have you throw names at me from the past, because I honestly dwell so much in the present that I have to confess to you that I forget for, oh, maybe weeks at a time that I was or am an actress. I lead a very full life. In another gear, I shifted at some point.
Because you are doing something right now that I love very much.
Good.
You
I'm
are
glad
the mayor.
you love it.
You are the mayor of the homeless, for the homeless
Well,
people.
I'm an honorary mayor
but
of,
you're
of
healthy.
Sherman Oaks.
Of Sherman Oaks.
And Sherman Oaks, in turn, is part of Los Angeles, and Tom Bradley is the real, very fine, real mayor of...
Is he really Is he really good for the homeless? Mayor Bradley.
Yes, he cares.
He does
care, but the city is very late in coming around to the necessary role it has to play. You know, in the last 12 years, I would say, no, the last 10 years, America has been expected to take care of people in need out of the private sector.
Right.
It was not government's job, it was suddenly yours and mine.
Yes.
To do something. I quite agree that it's our job to take care of people in need, but it is also our government's job.
Yes.
I feel very passionate about this. They started talking about armaments as security. I think security is when the people of a nation can feel secure, that there's a roof over their heads, and that there will be a meal in the near future.
Right.
That is security, when you know you can eat and sleep in safety.
Safety.
I don't worry about the atomic bomb nearly as much as I worry about the millions of homeless people who are allowed to live like animals. They're having to scavenge out there because they have no place to go. No place. And this is why 8 years ago, when they made me honorary mayor, I thought, well, I'd better put that title to some use. And
why does our government help others and other countries, not our own people, when our own people need help?
I would love to have that explained. I believe in foreign aid very strongly.
I do too,
but first. Now, the homeless phenomenon is just that. It's new, it's recent.
Right.
We've always had skid rows of people who couldn't conform to the 9-to-5 world,
yes,
or for whatever reason dropped out of society.
Right.
And the big cities of I guess, every country have had those people who are homeless, usually by choice or
yes,
by alcohol, making
yes,
the choice for them. But for American midstream citizens to be thrown out of work, to be suddenly evicted because they can't meet the next rent payment,
yes,
with their families, if the car hasn't been repossessed, then they all dwell in the family car.
yes.
And they're not as visible in a car, but they're there.
There are many in the car.
By the 100,000, whole families.
Hundreds of thousands of homeless in cars, living in cars. What do you do about this, Marsha? I mean, I see tears in your eyes right now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. But I see you are very, very caring about this.
It's where the last 8 years have gone, and trying to do what was possible to do.
Right.
Certainly, the Valley Mayor's Fund for the Homeless, which is what I got started 8 years ago.
Right.
Because there are many communities in the San Fernando Valley, and I pulled all the honorary mayors together and said, we have a problem in the valley. We've got homeless people by the thousands.
Right.
And what are we going to do about it? And this is how we got started. And this is 8 years later. What my outfit did was to try to fill a vacuum, because the San Fernando Valley is very new. It came into settlement post-World War II.
Right.
And that's just the last 40, 50 years. And there was nothing ready for hard times. Nothing. So the Valley Mayor's Fund, first job was to acquaint the Valley citizenry with the fact that there were homeless people who were not, quote, bums.
Yes.
And that many of them were victims of the economy or emotional trauma of some kind, and that since we house and clothe and feed our criminals,
right,
we had better start doing that for our homeless who have broken no law. They just have no place to go. So that educate the Valley public, help bring about facilities that were desperately needed, shelters, services of every kind that are needed for them, and 3, raise funds to help those things come about.
Right.
And to keep them open, to keep them operating.
Well, that's what happens. The government of this country are closing them up. When Reagan got into office, Reagan took out the homeless. He brought all, I mean, you realize what he did? He closed all the mental people, and they came from the mental institutions.
They had nowhere to go.
Is that it?
They were supposed to be community mental health centers where maybe the hometown setting would ring a bell and remind them and help them reconnect with reality.
Right.
It's a lovely concept,
right,
which predates Reagan's presidency. It goes back, I believe, to Kennedy, way back. Except that the communities were not ready for them. There were not mental health centers in the communities, and the families that could or would readmitted their mentally ill relatives.
Right.
But many of them couldn't because of just didn't have a spare bedroom or a place to put them.
Right.
Or they wouldn't because it was an embarrassment. And for whatever reason, those homeless hordes that were just pushed out of all the state asylums,
right,
all the mentally ill who were not considered a danger to themselves and or others, are out there wandering the streets,
right,
so defenseless, such targets.
They don't know where they are.
For rapists, for muggers, for people out for thrill. It's criminal and it's heartbreaking,
Marsha,
and they need protection.
Marsha Hunt, you've been out there. You've talked to many of these homeless. What have they said to you? What have they? You've asked them the questions. What have they come up and?
They want a job. They want a job.
But people out there said, no, they're bums.
I know.
That's not true,
I know.
is it?
Mind you, there are all shapes and sizes and flavors of homeless people.
Right.
There are addicts. There are the mentally ill. There are the undocumented Central Americans who have crossed the border illegally. But they're here, and they're hungry.
Yes.
And they want work. The reason they came here was maybe for safety from all the civil wars and turmoil in the Middle East, but they want jobs, they want self-respect, they want to be self-supporting. And it's almost impossible to get yourself out of homelessness without help. And that's why we in the Valley Mayor's Fund for the Homeless are working toward establishing something to be called Day Haven.
Day Haven.
Day Haven will provide services that all homeless people need in order to get out of homelessness. There will be showers where they can get clean, and before the homeless eat, they want to get clean.
They do.
A shower costs $2 at the Y. If you have $2, and if you don't, you start stinking, and nobody's going to let you near them.
Do they feel ashamed that other people are looking? They do, Marsha,
of course.
And they look.
So first they want to get clean. They want to shave and shampoo and start smelling sweet again. Then they eat. A snack bar that would not have junk food, but some really nourishing soups and sandwiches and fruits and things, the kind of nutrition that they've been doing without, which has weakened them and weakened their resistance to disease. A very caring, capable man said that a lot of Skid Rows are epidemics waiting to happen because these people's resistance is so lowered by malnutrition and exposure that TB, you name it, can sweep through those crowded sections of Skid Rows.
Yes. A lot of children.
Oh, gosh.
Lots
well,
of
this
children.
is the phenomenon, is that the fastest growing category of homeless people is families. And you tell me what happens to children who have to curl up under a bush or a freeway overpass or behind in a parking lot behind a building so they won't be driven out where they can't be seen from the street.
Right.
How do they get their schooling? How do they get values? And they have to be hung on to by their mother. It's usually a mother. Now and then it's both mother and father.
Welfare.
To keep
Can't
them
get
out
welfare because they have no address?
You need an address.
An address.
Catch
Why?
22.
That's...
Dayhaven would give them that address. They would be given mailboxes,
Yes.
so they could receive mail there. They would be given lockers so they could store their last worldly possessions and not have to schlep them around on their backs.
Oh.
They would have laundry machines where they could cleanse the clothes they've been living in and dry them, try on rooms for donated clothing until they find something that fits and that is becoming, so they can go look for a job with a hope of looking competent and pulled together. A first aid station to take care of their injuries and their ailments. And most important of all, counseling booths, one-on-one, where they talk with a trained person who can quickly identify that person's condition, mental and physical, can find out how long that person has been homeless, and there's damage done. The longer you're homeless, the more you're damaged. You cannot live like that and remain totally sane, totally adjusted for very long.
No.
Anyhow, all of this is ascertained. What kind of skill, if any, there is? If not, there's a referral to a skill training course somewhere. Maybe what is needed is more English, better English as a second language. Again, referral to where they can learn to speak English better.
Yes.
And be qualified, better qualified for a job. So it goes. This place, this Dayhaven, would refer them to casual labor, part-time jobs, or even good jobs.
Yes.
Because some very competent people show up.
Marsha Hunt,
That's what we hope to do.
you're doing something very beautiful.
Well, it feels good to be doing what we're
Are
able
you
to do.
bitter with our government?
I'm very angry with
I
our,
am.
with our,
I am.
our,
Very,
our
very much
federal
so.
government, and also with the state government for making the terrible cuts in help to the mentally ill.
Right.
They are helpless. They need our help. They need society's help, and that has to come out of our taxes. Our taxes are there for a reason.
Yes.
To
Why do people
to
don't
help
want to pay
give
taxes?
people an
Why
even
don't the
break.
rich want to pay those taxes? Why, Marsha?
How do you get rich except by acquiring and hanging on to it?
Don't they
No,
like
there
to
are very generous rich people. I
Some
don't
are.
mean to say they're not.
No, but some are. Some
Sure.
really are.
Sure.
You've had a lot. This Valley homeless thing right now, you're having a big thing at the Westwood Playhouse. Tell me about that.
This is
evening.
going to be...
With Michael Feinstein playing the piano?
It's Feinstein.
Feinstein.
It's rhyming.
It is,
Yes,
Feinstein.
Feinstein, I
Okay.
learned.
Michael always tells me
Like
that.
Leonard Bernstein was
okay.
a Stein.
Tell me about it.
Well, this is a love story. Back in the early 40s, when I was at MGM, I met a pair of young songwriters, still in their 20s, named Hugh Martin and Ralph Blaine, and they had been brought out by Metro to make a film of their first Broadway show called Best Foot Forward.
Right.
And the big hit from that is Buckle Down, Winsaki, Buckle
By Tommy
Down. And also with the show and with Martin and Blaine came June Allison and Nancy Walker.
Right, they were both in it.
And they both had their star careers grow
and I was
out of
one
that
of the
first
cadets
show.
in it. And I'm not going to tell you, but I was one of the little cadets in that. 12 years old. Go ahead. Let's go.
You were in
I
it.
was in it. Go ahead.
Skip, I
My
had no
first movie.
idea. All right.
First.
The next thing of real